No major news today, so let's get straight into the data and charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So looking at the Fear and Greed Index, stepped up just a smidgen from a 45 to a 46. Really no changes here, flat on momentum. Greed still on strength, continuing to hover, grind higher slowly. Breadth tapering here. And then put call ratio still continuing to trend higher just a little bit. Volatility stepping up a little bit as well. And then safe haven demand still in extreme fear. So mixed markets, and they are still hovering based on the price action that we saw today. And then interestingly enough, we did see a little bit of a jump in yields on junk bonds. Moving over to seasonality, slow grinding price action. Either way, whether it's election year or regular year, slightly bullish to sideways for the rest of the month. Moving over to earnings, we got McDonald's and Welltower here today. McDonald's missing on both, pretty interesting there. You don't see that too often. They came out and said that prices were too expensive, which I definitely agree with. The question is, will they actually bring down prices? That could be interesting. And then for tomorrow, we do have Microsoft after hours, P&G, Merck & Co., AMD, Pfizer, Starbucks after hours, Phillips 66 for some oil stocks out there. And then just look at the sheer number of stocks we have coming out tomorrow. It's definitely going to move markets. Match Group, always a fun one to watch. Lots of volatility there. And then for Wednesday, if you hold anything into the close tomorrow, you will see MasterCard. Doesn't say when it's coming out, but that could be pre-market. T-Mobile, pre-market. Qualcomm after hours. ARM Holdings after hours. Boeing in the morning. But the big one, obviously, is going to be Meta after hours. Looking at the economic calendar, there was nothing for today. Looking at tomorrow, GDP for the Eurozone, as well as consumer confidence and JOLTS job openings coming out at 10 o'clock. So a little bit of data tomorrow. And then Wednesday, the big one for the week, PCE for the Eurozone, ADP non-farm employment change, Chicago PMI, pending home sales, and then the FOMC statement here at 2 o'clock. That's obviously going to be huge. I don't think we're going to get a move. Everyone thinks it's going to be a pause, but what will he say, and will he signal a cut in September? Moving over to Max Payne, you can see it's sitting at 547, stock price a little bit below that. There's a few puts in the market, not a lot. Calls here at 552, so that's what you would expect. 540 is your low, 552 is the high. That seems a little bit tight with all of the earnings and announcements that we have coming out. There's not a ton of options, so these levels could absolutely break. Total options only about 500,000. Put call ratio relatively low at 1.9. But there are still a ton of puts down here at 480. And you can see all of this area underneath the curve. 505, 525, 530, 535. Still a lot more puts than calls, but that doesn't mean we can't get into these lower levels. Down at the bottom of the calls for the week would be about 539, which is still only about a 1% down move from current price. Moving over to the charts, you can see we did get a slightly higher high and then we gave most of that back. So now we're in sideways choppy action here. Need that 55 to hold. That's at 543.35. You also have a level here, 544.01. Momentum slightly bearish, but we really didn't break down in terms of structure too badly. You can see prices now between the 21 and the 55 EMAs here on the hourly chart. So that is sideways choppy action. We're not trending anymore the way that we were on that Friday session. You can see the grind up. And you can see we did continue that move here into the Monday open. So we did get the move higher. You can see that here. High of day was 547.05, but not really as bullish as I wanted to see. Doesn't mean we can't get one more day of push, hit the 550 level, and then we'll see what happens. But honestly, this is certainly not reassuring, and it kind of looks like we're losing momentum and that we're going to get that continuation lower a little bit sooner. It is Monday, so you don't usually see a ton of volume, and that was true today as well, only 39 million, relative to Friday where we had 53 million, and then Thursday 61 million. So volume, not a ton, so you wouldn't expect a huge move, but either way, looks relatively weak. Moving over to the Tasty charts, again, you can see we hit that 9 EMA at 547.16, so touched that level at the 8 EMA, pulled back slightly. Not a great indicator. Lowest ATR band would be your price target if this slow downtrend continues, which is sitting all the way down at 534.27. So that would be below the lowest ATR band. And then you can see you have the 89 EMA sitting there at 531. So we'll see how this plays. I definitely think there is concern here. Definitely in a downtrend, whether it's short term or long term, still remains to be seen. But it seems like market sentiment has shifted to the downside at least a little bit. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, you can see rallied right up into the middle of the range. That's what we were looking for. Wanted to see a test of that ATR resistance. That was 549.93. Didn't quite get there. So again, that looks a little bit concerning. Seems like we're fading on momentum. And you can see now that lowest ATR band, that is sitting at 534.39. So right in that same zone that we've been looking at. And that fits in with the daily thesis as well. This just looks bearish. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very similar thesis. Big push up, almost touched the level, pulled back, almost touched this level. So we're in this consolidation here. Midline is 464.50, upper range 468, lower range 461.55. We are definitely in there now. You can see we're between the 21 and 55, just like we saw on the SPY. Sideways consolidation. Slightly bullish on the day, 0.2, but nothing crazy. Momentum continues to swing to the bull side, so you could expect a little bit more push up. Obviously, all of the news and earnings are going to move markets, so I think the technicals have a little bit less to do with it. But you can see that trend line here. We established it, held it here on Friday, held it here onto the open, and then broke through there, retested, and then sold off. So doesn't look nearly as good going into tomorrow as it did going into today. And really, I think markets are just paused, waiting for all of the news and earnings coming this week. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see we're almost at that lowest ATR band, and you can actually see a bearish candle here on the Tasty charts, something we didn't see on the previous. ATR target would be 460.23 right here, which is right at that 89 EMA. So this is the zone where we're almost right there, almost wicked it today actually. Momentum still bearish, bias still bearish, but we are a little bit extended, partly why we're seeing that kind of pullback in time. Didn't quite get to that 8 EMA, which is at 470.34. I think we could potentially still see that, but overall structure still quite bearish. And then looking at that 4-hour chart, this is certainly the concern. So you can see this previous push, sideways choppy action, middle of the range, big push down, overextension, just like we had here, pullback in time, and that seems like what we're seeing here. Overextension, pullback, middle of the range, and then we're going to get a drop to that lowest level, which is currently sitting around 453.16. So that would be your price target if we were to see this acceleration to the downside, which certainly is possible. We're still in profit here at 462.95 was the buy price. And I did sell options against that, so made a little bit of money on it today. But this structure looks very weak, and this is a clear downtrend. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell was down 1.11%. We kind of anticipated this. We're continuing to watch this RSI dwindle here as price action still hovers. That's not a great sign typically, so almost got to the level. Again, didn't get there. The price target I would like to see is up at this trend line here around 228.09. Still haven't gotten there. Momentum looking a little bit bearish. The reason I'm still looking at this like a bullish trend is because we did have this really strong push. So you would expect buyers to come in eventually, even if you get a short-term dip. So either way, still like this. And you can see a ton of volume here, ton of interest in these small caps. And then you have the Dow, negative on the day, 0.11, nothing crazy, still in the same zone. Still looking for this to push up to that trend around 412. Moving over to stocks that moved here today, we got Enphase and On Corporation. Enphase selling off 4.71%, just could not get above this Friday high from 12 July. Wicked above it briefly here on Friday, gap down and fell here today. Broke the level 114.33, that was at this consolidation high here. At this point, you would expect to push down to the trend around 109.73. It is still a slow grinding uptrend, so maybe we get another swing here, but right now it's short-term bearish. And then looking at this move for semiconductor, 11.5% up, huge volume, big swing to the upside. It's in this consolidation here, and it did hit some resistance points here. Let's go ahead and add a level. If this zone breaks, then you could see a push maybe up to these previous highs back from December. That would be around $86 or about $8 higher from current price. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, both of these turning in very slight positive days. Momentum starting to swing to bullish. Interesting. Maybe this consolidation holds and get a little bit more push up over the coming days. And then Microsoft, it's been swinging for 2 days here. Did get a slight positive day there as well, 0.34. Maybe this pushes to the trend around 439, needs to get above 429.88, tested that level and rejected, so that's not super great. Obviously, this is going to be dependent on earnings, but right now, looks like a big down move, looks a little extended, still waiting for a little bit more pop. I do think it'll eventually be met with sellers and a bigger move down will come, but in the short term, you could look for a 1 to 2 day push. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA here, you can see Tesla getting a nice move up, 5.6%, momentum swinging to bullish, RSI swinging to bullish, big volume on the move, hit the level 232.57, that was the price target. We were looking for that up move, sure enough we got it. And this is actually more what I was expecting across markets. A bigger move here, looking to retest some of these levels and then we can see what happens. Is resistance going to hold and we get the bigger sell, or are we going to push through these levels and start to see a resumption of this trend? But right now, positive day, you would expect a second positive day, momentum swinging, everything says bullish here on Tesla for me. And then looking at NVIDIA, down quite a bit, 1.3%. We're at the trend line again, tested this trend here on Thursday, testing it again here on Monday. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, everything says this should continue to break, potentially down to that 106.64 area. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, you can see staples bouncing 0.04, still like this, selling off a little bit after hours, still finding rejection here, but momentum and RSI both say bullish, still looking for 79.90. And then look at discretionaries, again, similar move to what we expected based off the Friday move, momentum swinging into bullish, RSI swinging to bullish, decent volume there. I think we can get to that 21 EMA up at 187.82, selling off a little bit after hours, but I still like this to push at least a little bit more. Moving over to utilities and oil and gas. Utilities continues this short-term run here. Had a massive run from mid-April up here to mid-May. Now we're kind of in this sideways consolidation. Dipped low, held the low, rallying up, seeing if we can break that 71.83 level. Hasn't quite done it yet. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. If it does, 74 would be the next one. And honestly, this looks quite good. This is similar to what I'm expecting on some of these other really powerful moves. Strong move, decent pullback, kind of looks like a bull flag, and now we're getting that breakout, waiting to see if we can push to that next area. And then looking at oil and gas stocks, continuing to triple bottom in this zone. Got a big down day at 1.25%, tested the trend line, caught a bounce, down just a little bit after hours, momentum bearish, RSI bearish, volume bearish, but as long as this zone continues to hold in this trend line here, this is still a trade to the upside for me. And this is kind of mixed signals, right? Because you have this really powerful move, decent pullback, we're holding a base here. As long as that base holds, you would expect to push back up to that previous high, or at least an intermediate level around 154. But if this trend breaks, then you could start to look for those bigger pushes down, potentially into that 128 area. Anything in that zone, I would argue, is probably a medium to longer term buy, but you do have to consider the fact that oil and gas stocks, as recently as May of 23, were trading around the 116 area, which is still about $30 lower from current price, which is a quite substantial move. That'd be about 18.5% lower from current price. So not looking to hold this no matter what. I do like this zone as a current support though. Moving over to oil and gold, you can see oil continues to sell, probably why oil and gas stocks have been suffering. We knew once this zone in here at the 200 broke, this was probably going lower. And then you can see this trend line breaking here, closed below it on this Monday session. So probably going to go back down to that 73 area. Had a very powerful run from there, so I would expect buyers to be in that zone again. And then we'll see what happens from there. Still in this short-term downtrend, still looking for support in that zone. And then looking at gold, very different chart, holding a higher low currently, slightly down on the day, momentum slightly bearish. Need to see this 55 hold, which it's currently doing at 218.44. As long as this zone holds, we should look for another push, potentially back to that all-time high now, up around 228. Moving over to RIOT and Marathon, big down day here. So that's a little bit surprising, honestly. We did get the wick high like we expected, so you did get slight continuation, but as soon as we hit that new relative high, we did give it all back. Still at the 21 here on RIOT, need that zone to hold at 10.58. As long as it does, this could be kind of a bull flag type setup. Look for that next push. But looking at Marathon, this continues to look quite bearish. Dipped a little bit lower, broke some of these EMAs and SMAs. At this point, you would expect it to push back down to that 1878 level. Moving over to Breadth, 20-day Breadth, basically flat, 50-day Breadth, also flat. So Breadth not really moving at all here today. Makes sense, not a ton of movement, not a ton of volume. 50-day did still hold this level though, so you would expect a little bit more upside there. 20-day still at resistance, so consolidation, waiting to see what happens. Are we going to break higher back to this previous high and continue this trend, or is this structure going to break and we're going to start to see some lower lows? Moving over to the dollar, big push here on the dollar, probably why we saw a little bit of weakness in markets. Up about 0.25%, momentum bullish, RSI bullish. We've been saying this is going to go higher for a while, but it's taking a long time to do it. We've been in this zone since the 19th. And here we are on the 29th, looking for that push up. We did close above the level, so that's bullish. Rejected a little bit off that 21 EMA, but overall I would still expect this to push. The price target is currently the trend line up around 105.18, and then if that breaks, you got 105.50 sitting up there. So right now, dollar looking pretty bullish, and I would expect at least one, maybe two more days of push, and then we can start to get into the zone and see what happens from there. Moving over to bonds, J&K pulled back a little bit, 0.09, nothing crazy. Still holding this short-term trend, still cannot get above that 95.61 level on a closing basis. Continuing to test it, continuing to reject, so that's concerning. Looks very similar to the Russell setup, just can't break higher. And then looking at TLT, big jump here, about 0.5%, swinging to the bull side. I still think this is a bullish trade. I still like it here. Trend sitting up at 94.46. If that breaks, you got 96.50 above there, and then trend resistance all the way up around 97.50. So I still like this to push, continues to hold higher lows. And the overall thesis on bonds is that yields are going to go lower eventually over the next 2 years or so, which should give bonds a pretty substantial bull trend from here. Moving over to volatility, move index stepping up just a little bit. VIX slightly positive, 1.28%. Again, this continues to hold these higher lows. Held the support there at the 9 EMA. Based on that, you would expect another push here, which again would be bearish for markets. Interesting there. It is below the VIX, so you could say maybe this is going to break down. Not seeing it quite yet. Got an inside candle off of a bear candle, so potentially that means we're going to push back up into this zone around 20, and then we'll see what happens from there. Moving over to my accounts, I made a little bit of money on the day, got back above 137. You like to see that. And then looking at my Roth, down a little bit there. The Russell was down a lot, but I had a 220 call, so I was able to cover most of that. I did sell a 221. I rolled down and out just a little bit early, and then it rallied a little bit here into the close. You can see it's down a little bit after hours, so it might not be in such a terrible position. That was for $1.40, so decent credit on the day, about 0.75%. Not going to be quite enough to cover if we get another day like we got today, but we'll see how it plays. And then looking at the Qs, same position, 464, got a little bit bigger credit here at 280. Did trade in and out of that a little bit. Should have had, honestly, a little bit more profit, but not terrible, 280 on the day. And then looking at the XOP, obviously, sitting down at 143, stock price 143.28. So still in decent position to make money. Dollar credit, so my break even is technically 142, but I would like to see this position hold and start to bounce from here. I'll be watching this one pretty closely tomorrow. Overall, relatively neutral, but still being very cautious as markets kind of teeter on some zones of support, which could lead to a big move in either direction. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the charts today and what are we going to get with all of this news and earnings over the next 2 days. Will it be enough to reaccelerate an up move and justify these valuations? Or is this the breaking point and we're going to see that bigger contraction before we get a Santa Claus rally into the end of the year? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.